to earn profit. This is also there to promote research, to promote interest in higher education. So these are the main purposes why multinational companies which are making their presence felt. Many of the companies, they are very original companies, like many of the Rolls-Royce, for instance, the German company, many of the companies, for instance, in South Korea, they are adding on the basic discoveries and innovations done by the mother companies, like the German companies. So the add-ons, they have new researches, how you can make a car a better consumer-friendly car. So the car was invented by the German company. Now the South Korean company is adding on to different facilities, and they are having researches done how we can make a car more consumer-friendly and more useful for people who are driving that car, how different facilities can be fitted in that car. So big business houses, big companies within the country, across the country, they are a big source of funding. The only apprehension, the only fear is that often they project or they fund researches which are very specific to their own professional interest, to their own benefit. But many of the organizations go beyond that. They are funding researches for the cause of the uplift of the development of researches. For instance, the institutions which have been established by these big organizations, many of the universities in America are hugely funded by these multinational companies. Same is the case in India. Tata is funding many universities. Infosys is funding many universities. Computer company Premji, Wipro company, yes. So they are helping computer centers and research areas, and always ready to collaborate with universities and research organizations to provide. So this set, I think this is complete set now when we think of where from resources flow for researchers across the globe. Possibly these are the four sources where from resources come for quality research in higher education, different types of researches. Number one, international organizations, world organizations, like the World Bank, etc., regional organizations. Many of the organizations which are like a European Union Commission. European Union Commission is also launching research projects. This SARC has been very weak organized. SARC could not do much, but there is a provision. There is a SARC university, Delhi mein hai. SARC University has. So we suppose that SARC University and all such regional organizations and also, so world level organizations or regional organizations, they are helping and trying to promote research, giving money and giving also technical advice and research advice, sharing the research methodology, etc. And the second is foreign governments. For us, like the British government, important, Japan, and all friendly countries, government, American government, and now very recently many of the Middle East countries where our Prime Minister had been going, they are ready to, this Aramco company of Saudi Arabia, they have now launched, and many of our economists and our industrial leaders, they are at the board of the Aramco of Saudi Arabia. So they are also now ready to finance researches in petrochemicals. Al Jubail city in Saudi, very famous in petrochemicals. So they are now ready to finance projects on, so at the world level, and then at the government level, then thirdly at the non-government organization, trust funds, foundations, societies, which are non-government, which are also helping different types of researches across the countries, at the international level, at the national level. And then lastly, different private companies which are funding researches. Many of these researches, of course, go to meet their interests, but many of the researchers also go to finance general research projects which benefit the whole society. Now let us come to the national mechanism. What is the this is international sources which are helping research. The national mechanism of funding of research in India, national, India के sense में आ रहे हैं. What is the राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर, at the national level, what is the mechanism of funding of research in India? that mechanism of funding is very organized. Mechanism of high quality research funding. It has two sources. One is public funding, and the other is private funding. Private funding. Public funding means government. Public means government. Public funding means how the government is funding researchers in higher education at the university level, at the research institutions level, at the college level, तीनों levels पर. Specified research organizations, universities, university department, which are also, many of the departments are known as postgraduate and research department. Many universities, they have the designation of research, PG and research department of whatever is the subject, PG and research department. So when we say government, public funding in the form of the government, because we are a federal country, so we are having governments at three levels. We have central government, we have state governments, we have local governments. All these three, they have their enrollment, they have their contribution in financing higher education research. The contribution, as you know, the contribution of the central government is limited to central universities, IITs and IIMs largely. Very little money is flowing from the central government to state universities, to other institutions of higher learning for research purposes. Generally, the contribution of the central government is limited to central universities, the old central universities, the newly established central universities, the IITs and the IIMs, and of the total money, often the data is published that larger part of the research allocation of the central government goes to the research organizations. Lesser money comes to the general universities for research. And whatever comes to general universities, again the larger part of that goes to natural sciences and physical sciences, and much less remains for research in social sciences and humanities. So these are the structural division of the money which is coming from the central government for research in higher education. Rough estimates show, I read somewhere, rough estimates show that, and this is also, there is also mention of that in one of my early books, long back, 89 का किताब है हमारी financing of higher education के ऊपर, financing, उसमें research section भी. Even now, the contribution of the central government is roughly about 20% of the total money which is coming for financing of higher education research. The larger responsibility of shouldering is with the state government. This is the residual, the residual responsibility or the ultimate responsibility is of the state government. State government, all state governments. Central universities in any state, for instance, in Uttar Pradesh, we have four central universities. Professor Jaiswal is there in BBAU in Lucknow, which is 1997 or so. Is that old? And of course, the Aligarh Muslim University, almost a century old. And BHU is already a century old, 1516, Allahabad University, 1887. And then we have some 27 or 28 in Uttar Pradesh state universities. Those state universities are dependent upon, many of those, is not all, many of those state universities are dependent upon the state government for research grant. And the state government is funding through two types of researches. The central government is also funding researches in state universities. I don't know what will be the new mechanism, but previously, you should be knowing better, they used to give planned grants for research purposes, central government, planned grants to state universities, planned grants. Now, because 5-year plans have been done away with, we have yet to know, personally, I still do not know what will be the mechanism of the
They're giving money to
Sorry?
they are giving money through RUSA. And there is
RUSA scheme is there, yeah.
But there is other like DST, there is a Science Engineering Research Board. They are giving to state universities also.
Yes.
Central
So all the three schemes, they were campaigns, in fact, specific campaigns, movements to invigorate the level of education. For instance, in 90s, recall that Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan and the massive support of the district, the DFID funded program, district education, DITE, District Institute of Education and Technology, the contribution of the DITE at the district level, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, World Bank contribution in the decade of 1990s for increasing the enrollment of, and then 2009, that RMSA, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, that Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan was to consolidate quality of education at the secondary level, higher secondary level. And also RMSA, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, secondary education, national secondary education campaign or movement that also focused, एक बड़ा सवाल उसने पैदा किया, big question it raised, can secondary education, can higher secondary education be developed as the terminal stage of education, so that the students passing out of the higher secondary education, they do not go to the university or college, they look to the labor market, they look to the job market, because many of the cadres, many of the type of people who are needed in the economy, in the society, even if they have good quality secondary education, is good enough. So that also focused on that. Can we develop higher secondary education as the terminal stage of education? कि वहाँ करने के बाद फिर वो ड्राइवर बन जाए, टेक्नीशियन बन जाए, whatever. So they do not go to pursuit of higher education. With that aim, that was the and what you mentioned rightly, RUSA, Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. Briefly speaking, yes, it has been a quality improvement program, but the money, naam to bahut hai, but the money coming through RUSA is very small money. And that is why we still say that the role of the central government is small in funding research. And RUSA is largely for strengthening the building infrastructure instead of funding research projects and research.
Who has gone to HEFA now?
HEFA. So loan is a loan organization, in fact. In fact, it's a loan organization. Loan organization, and then again, we can enlist RUSA as a route through which the central government is helping the state universities in the form of giving out money. So the larger responsibilities lie with the state government, and then within the central and the state government, in the Constitution of India, there is a provision, and that provision is not only for higher education or research, that provision is in general. There are two provisions in the Constitution of India, Article 282, Article 275. 282, Article 282 and Article 275. These two articles are used by the Ministry of Finance to provide grants in aid for all sectors, leave alone social sector of education, for all sectors. And then of course education is one of the important sectors where assistance from their grants from the central government comes. Article 282 is Constitution, the wording in the Constitution is what is called grants from the central government for public purposes to state government, public purposes to the state government. For a long time, when 5-year plans were working, the grants coming from the central government to the state government, to the education sector, and to fund specific higher education institutions was termed as plan grant for higher education. And gradually, that plan grant assumed the role of once for all, or of non-recurring nature, plan grant of non-recurring nature. The Article 275 provides for administrative transfers from the central government. that administrative transfer from the central government meets all committed expenditure requirements, and this finance commission, which is now visiting different states, and the time of the latest finance commission has also been extended. So they are assessing the requirement, what the state universities will be requiring for the promotion of higher education and research in their respective states. So they make a proposal to the central government, and then the central government gives grant to the state government under Article 275 through administrative purposes. This grant is a unique grant, Article 282. Here the wording of the constitution is very interesting. It says, इसमें उल्टी गंगा भी बह सकती है. उल्टी गंगा का मतलब कि states can also give grant to central government. ये भी इसमें आ सकता है. Wording सुनिए देखिए. How very interesting wording of Article 282. Salute to the framers of the constitution. Any government in India can make grants for any such public purpose for which it is not competent to make laws. Any government in India can give grants for any such public purpose for which it cannot legislate. For instance, defense of India. State government, like government of Uttar Pradesh, cannot legislate on defense of India. It cannot make law related to the defense of India. But if there is a need, government of Uttar Pradesh can give grant for the defense of India. So very unique provision. Even state governments can give grants for public purposes to the all money which the central government had been giving to the state government for primary education, for secondary education, because until 1976, until that constitutional amendment, when the education was brought from the state list on the concurrent list, 1976, before that, primary education, secondary education was this entire responsibility of the state government. But the central government was giving grant because there was a provision that the central government can give grant to any state government on a subject on which the central government could not legislate. So primary education only state government could make a law, central government could not, but now central government was entitled to give grant to the state government also. It's a unique federal country, we still
even sir, in Jammu Kashmir Article 370, they put in D clause. D clause they are funding to Jammu Kashmir state grant. So even they have not withdrawn the Article 370.
So this is the contribution of the state government, and then local bodies, they have very limited contribution for higher education, and particularly for higher education research, very limited contribution. Some examples are there, like for instance in Lucknow, that Aminabad Inter College, and now it is Degree College, that is run by Lucknow Municipal Corporation. So previously it was a school, then it became inter college, then became a degree college. Some PG classes are also being run. It is maintained by Lucknow Municipal Corporation. So there are such unique examples where local bodies is a good topic of research. Somebody should embark upon this. How many of such institutions in different states are there which are financed still by the local bodies at the higher education level? Many such organizations, institutions, degree colleges, they are maintained by the local municipalities or municipal corporation in that city or in that state. So this is the mechanism of financing higher education research at the government level or at the public level. Now we come to the private financing of or private resources for research in India. Private resources, universities and research institutions were established by the private sector. I read a book long back, and the title of that book is Universities in the Modern World, and that book is published in 1966. The author is M.M. Chambers, Universities in the Modern World. That gives short stories of how big universities of the world were set up, how big universities of the world were established. One of those stories is, very briefly, one of those stories in that book, Universities in the Modern World, M.M. Chambers, 1966. One of those stories is that 9 clergymen gathered at a place in America, 9 persons from the church, Padri, ek jagah ikatha hue. Then they decided to start an educational institution, to set up an educational institution. But they had no resources, no money, how to go about, how to start. Then they decided that let us donate 1 book each, and that donation, that collection of 9 books from 9 persons was the entire resource base on which an institution was built, which is now known as Yale University of America. 2 campuses, Yale University of America. So such are the humble beginnings at the individual effort level. Virtually same is the case with Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi when he set up BHU, Aligarh, so say the Madan Ali, all that MM Chambers का book पढ़िए तो अभी कहीं लाइब्रेरी में मिल जाएगा कि तो पुरानी लाइब्रेरीज में जरूर मिल जाएगा छोटे-छोटे स्टोरीज है how great institutions were set up and how the so it was private charity, private money, charity in the form of charity. यूनिवर्सिटीज का वेबसाइट पे जाइए तो आपको लिखा मिलेगा that those were the people who donated their land, who donated their money on which this institution was built. So private money, private contribution came for financing in the form of donation and endowment. Donation and endowment. And there are many donations and endowments still continuing, and many research fellowships coming out of those endowments with many universities. They are named after the people who have donated those money, those endowments to different universities. And those researches are known after that endowment which has funded that research in many organizations, in many universities. So, but their contribution is not increasing now. Whatever contribution came in the form of endowment or donation, that stands there. It is not increasing. And that is why the private donation or private contribution, private investment for promotion of research, and there used to be deeds or citation. Executive Council used to pass a resolution that this money is given for research in sociology or economics or in psychology or in chemistry and will be named as such and such fellowship for research in this subject. So, but those are now limited, and because the requirements of fellowship has gone up, the money there is also relatively limited as per the old levels of standard and money which they did donate. So donation, private donation and endowment started, that was the source in the beginning to finance researchers, to those researchers who had the capacity, who had the ability to go for research, but they did not have money to fund their own research and to pay the fees for research. So those were the scholarship and fellowships which came to the rescue. Now the other source of the private contribution comes in the name of fees of the students for research, PhD fees. In state and central universities, fees is still very nominal. PhD fees. State universities, central universities, still very nominal. But in private universities, it is hopping. Lakhs PhD fees. And the contribution now. Research fees or fees in general. What is fees? Fees is a token contribution, is a token charge, indicative payment from the beneficiaries of any service in order that the service can be provided to the beneficiaries orderly and properly. That is the meaning of it, the definition of fees. Token payment. अब research 10 researcher है तो 1,000 रुपया ले लीजिए and give them a room. They will be sitting there using the library and doing their research work. Token fees, indicative payment. Now, which is the big change which has come. Now fees, and particularly the research fees, is being viewed as a technique of financing the entire research expenditure. As a technique of financing, then also possibly to generate some surplus over. And that is why the research fees or fees in specific organizations, and particularly the private universities and research organizations, their fees has become almost prohibitive, and that is why many of the programs which lead to researches, they have become so expensive. Medical line का researches में देखिए the admission to MD courses, DM courses, masters, MS courses, leading to research where medical research is involved, specific courses in different branches of medical sciences are so expensive that many of the it's virtually amazing the unbelievable levels of fees are there. So this is why the concern is now how to help those students who have the ability to embark upon research, but they cannot pay those high levels of risk, high levels of fee which are meant for their students. And that is why there are different types of, as I mentioned earlier, different types of sources where from the money is coming to help these people, to help these organizations. The last thing which is important is about how the market sector has come into, or what we say, researches and the neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a new phrase which is coming up. Neoliberalism means allowing the market sector to enter into higher education and research sector, allowing the market sector to enter into the research and higher education. Neoliberalism. Liberalism was limited to liberalization. That is, government should open up its door also to the universities, private providers, private banks, private universities. Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is that system where we allow market theory to operate in higher education research sector. Market theory to operate. अब देखिए, बहुत अमेजिंग चीज आ रही है, 3 चीजें आपके सामने हम रख रहे हैं, and they are very debatable, and carry it with you and debate. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Neoliberalism. Neoliberalism believes, the propounders of the market theory believe, many of the economists, many of the social scientists believe, many of the people who are the propounders of the capitalism and international capitalism, they believe, अभी नई बहुत सी किताबें जो नई आई, पिकेटी की किताब जो कैपिटलिज्म के ऊपर भी नई बुक आई है, उसमें 3 questions. 1, they say why the rot has set in higher education research is that the producers are not the price setters. Number 1, producers are not the price setters. Producers are not the price makers. Setter माने price makers. Producers are not the price setters. आप क्या है इंडस्ट्री में क्या है? आपको कोई सामान है, आप ये पेन बनाते हैं, मार्कर बनाते हैं, your price is 20 rupees, your price is 50 rupees, your price is 100 rupees. I am the maker, I set the price. ये मतलब हुआ. कहा जा रहा है in the higher education sector, the producers are the teachers, the researchers, but they are not the price setters. They do not dictate the price. The research goes in the private sector, and the benefit goes again to the private sector where the pricing is done. So the producers are you, your students, your researchers, your projects, and the price is being set by somebody else. So one of the reasons why, and that is why that new discussion has come, intellectual property right. Intellectual property right. That once you put anything in public domain, the intellectual property right should go to you, and you should be the price setter of that. Secondly, the consumers are not the purchasers. Consumers are not the purchasers. Consumers are not the purchasers means that those who are who are pursuing those higher education courses in research, they are not adequately paying for it. The argument goes that even in the state and central universities, they should be paying highly for it. The neoliberalism allow the market theory to come. They should not be admitted on the token fee or the nominal fee. There should be now higher level of fee. They are purchasing it. They should adequately pay for it because they believe that fee is now as a price tag. If you say that you are paying at a lower fee, that means you are pursuing a low quality research.